I promise this is for real this time. Hello everyone, welcome to a new series, well, sort of new. I've made 2 pilot episodes of an expanded version of Monsters of the Mind. You might notice that my character isn't on screen right now. Well, that's because I've decided that for these videos, I think I should do a different format. Let's just pretend that these videos aren't canon to Mr.G lore. Sound good? Good. Anyway, today we're talking about the most famous Japanese monster, the king of all monsters, the world's most famous kaiju, Godzilla, or Gojira, as he was originally called. Now, with Godzilla, one important thing to note is that there isn't just one being named Godzilla. There's actually several creatures that have taken up the mantle. As such, if you want answers about Godzilla, you gotta be specific about which era you're talking about. But regardless of who Godzilla is, they all have pretty much the same description. A reptilian monster resembling a pre-70s theropod with stegosaurus-like plates on his back that stands at about... Actually, that's one thing about Godzilla that's always changing. You see, sometimes Godzilla is slightly more than 300 feet tall, sometimes he's closer to 400 feet, but the record for the biggest Godzilla comes from the anime movie Planet of Monsters, where that Godzilla is nearly 1,000 feet tall. As for his morality, Godzilla started out as a bad guy, but later incarnations have become sort of an anti-hero, or at the very least, the lesser of 2 evils compared to other monsters. As for his species, that's actually pretty vague. Everyone called Godzilla a dinosaur, but in the original film, he was given an estimate that placed him sometime in the Permian, which would make him older than the dinosaurs. But later media does try to make it seem like he is a dinosaur, or at least a dinosaur-like reptile. Unless you're talking about the 1998 American movie, where in that film he was a mutant iguana. But we're getting off topic. For his abilities, Godzilla has super durability and super strength, as to be expected from a giant creature. After all, basically every giant has those abilities in media. He's also immune to radiation, and in fact, in some versions, he's even healed by it. And he's amphibious, meaning he's good in both land and water. And most famously, he has the ability to shoot a beam of concentrated radiation from his mouth that is estimated to be as powerful as a large nuclear bomb. However, he's not invincible. He's able to be beaten by creatures similar in size and strength. However, killing Godzilla is a very difficult task that very few can say they've succeeded in. Godzilla first appeared in the 1954 movie of the same name, and honestly, this film is kinda weird to watch in retrospect. You see, most kaiju movies have this reputation of being cheesy B-movies of just giant monsters destroying a city. You cut to people freaking out and the army firing large rockets at the monster, and maybe they fight another giant monster, you know, things like that. But the original Godzilla is unironically a horror movie. This film takes the concept of a giant radioactive lizard attacking a large city, and it plays it deadly straight. It almost feels like a deconstruction of the genre, except that this film kickstarted the genre, so I can't really call it that. Yeah, Godzilla still destroys buildings, but the fact that he's able to so effortlessly level a city is supposed to be seen as horrifying. There's no other monsters either, it's just him. The whole movie just gives off an air of hopelessness, and even after the monster's dead, there's nothing really left to do. The whole city's been irradiated. Many people are gonna die of radiation poisoning. So weird going back to this and seeing just how straight this movie played the concept. The plot of this movie is that one day, a giant monster ended up being awoken from a nuclear test in the South Pacific, and it ends up attacking Japan. Nothing the military does seems to stop it, until eventually this one guy creates a machine that is able to destroy oxygen atoms. When Godzilla is exposed to it, he ends up suffocating to death, falling the great beast once and for all. But in order to make sure that the device that killed Godzilla never becomes used in warfare, the creator burns its blueprints and kills himself so that it can never be recreated. Godzilla's next appearance was the very next year in Godzilla Rides Again. This film stars a different monster named Godzilla, and it introduced one of the most important aspects of Godzilla movies, fighting other giant monsters. This movie introduces the first of many monsters Godzilla would fight in his many decades as a movie star, an ankylosaur-esque creature named Anguirus. I think that's how it's pronounced. Godzilla took a bit of a break for a while, but he came back in 1962, where he was pitted against another famous giant movie monster from the other side of the Pacific, in King Kong vs. Godzilla, which is about King Kong fighting Godzilla. Now, this film actually ignited a pretty prevalent urban legend that I need to debunk right now. You see, a lot of people claim that in Japan Godzilla wins and in America King Kong wins, but that's not true. King Kong wins no matter what region. His next film would be Mothra vs. Godzilla, not to be confused with Godzilla vs. Mothra. That's a completely different film. Anyway, in this film, Godzilla fights another kaiju who had previously been the star of her own movie, Mothra, the Giant Moth. Mothra is pretty famous for the fact that despite being a giant moth, she is very strong. Also, she's a goddess, I guess. Next, we got Ghidorah, the three-headed monster. This film is notable for introducing Godzilla's biggest rival of them all, King Ghidorah, a three-headed dragon with lightning powers. This film also introduced another giant monster who previously had their own film into the Godzilla lore, with Rodan the mutant pteranodon. Okay, Godzilla's had a lot of movies, and if I went through each of them in depth, we'd be here all day. So, from this point on, I'll only be mentioning films that did something notable for the Godzilla series. If I miss one of your favorite movies, don't blame me. In 1967, Godzilla was given the Son of Monster treatment, and he ended up getting a son named Minilla, who most kaiju fans don't seem to like, so I'm just gonna skip this one. In 1974, we were given Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. You might notice that a lot of Godzilla titles are just Godzilla vs. other monster. This film introduced Godzilla's robotic clone, Mechagodzilla. In this film, he's alien in origin, but in later films he was made by the United Nations as an anti-Godzilla defense mechanism. Mechagodzilla basically has all the same powers as Godzilla, but he's a robot. But speaking of clones, in 1994 we were given another clone in Space Godzilla, a clone of Godzilla made after his DNA got exposed to space crystals. I'm only mentioning this because when I first read this I was just like, what am I reading? In 1998, America decided to make its own Godzilla movie with Godzilla. Yeah, that's its only name, but most people just call it Godzilla in 1998. As mentioned earlier, in this film, Godzilla is a mutant iguana rather than a prehistoric monster. Also, he's been drastically redesigned to look more like a T-Rex covered in crystals, I guess? That's the best way to describe him in this movie. Oh yeah, he was also a lot weaker, and he didn't possess atomic breath anymore. This version is not very popular with fans, since they changed so much about him, and in general he just didn't have the same presence as the original Godzilla. This version ended up proving to be so unpopular that he eventually had the God part stripped from his name and just is referred to as Zilla nowadays. And it led to a pretty funny scene in a Godzilla movie from 2004, Final Wars, where the American Godzilla gets summoned to fight the Japanese Godzilla, but he gets killed in just a few seconds. Further mocking him, while the other monsters were portrayed of practical effects, Zilla was rendered in very bad CGI. Just to further spit in the face of the American Godzilla movie. In 2014, America tried again to much better success this time with 2014's Godzilla. This film was much better received due to the fact that Godzilla was kind of taken back to his roots a little bit. In this film, Godzilla has to fight new kaiju called Mutos. And, yeah. This film is notable for kickstarting the Monsterverse, aka the Godzilla Cinematic Universe. In 2019, it got a sequel with Godzilla King of the Monsters, which introduced more classic monsters to the cinematic universe, like Mothra and King Ghidorah. And then in 2021, we were given a remake of Godzilla vs. Kong. This time, Godzilla technically wins, but the two kaiju have to team up to stop Mechagodzilla. Godzilla's also had a few TV shows. In 1978, there was a series just called Godzilla, created by Hanna-Barbera, because every cartoon in the 70s was created by them. And like every 70s cartoon ever made, it was pretty much Scooby-Doo. Yeah. In 1998, we were given Godzilla the series, based on the 98 movie. From what I can tell, people actually like this series, but I've never seen it, so I can't really say anything about it. All I know is that apparently, since they only had the rights to Godzilla, other famous kaiju were replaced with stand-ins that were blatantly obviously supposed to be them, but were different for legal reasons. Like, apparently one episode featured a giant yeti who was blatantly obviously supposed to be King Kong or something, but that's basically all I know. Godzilla has also had his fair share of video games, the first one being Godzilla for the Commodore 64, but this wasn't licensed, so it doesn't really count. The first licensed Godzilla game was Godzilla vs. 3 Giant Monsters for the Japanese computer, the MSX, which is also the same platform that the first Metal Gear was on. Huh, go figure. The most famous Godzilla game is the NES game Godzilla Monster of Monsters. This isn't really famous for its gameplay, but rather for the fact that it spawned a famous creepypasta that introduced the fictional kaiju known as Red, who many people actually want to see in an official Godzilla media. And in the late 70s, Marvel Comics gave Godzilla his own series, where he interacted with other Marvel superheroes like the Avengers. But after they lost the rights to Godzilla, Marvel, anytime they reference the series, they just kind of have to vaguely allude to Godzilla, or be like, oh, like there was the time with the giant lizard who totally isn't Godzilla. To this day, Godzilla is the most famous Japanese character not from a video game. Or anime. Actually, never mind. Godzilla is more famous than any anime character. Prove me wrong, weebs! Prove me wrong! Anyway, ever since he became big, Godzilla has been parodied and homaged in plenty of media, from cartoons to video games to movies. Godzilla is also considered to be one of the classic movie monsters, often being grouped in with characters like King Kong or Dracula. His roar has become a common sound effect, and he even got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, being one of the few fictional characters to do so. Also, because of his title of the King of the Monsters and his general ferocity and fame, Godzilla has become a popular character for versus debating, often being pitted against characters from other series like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man or Optimus Prime. Now, you guys know me. You know I don't really like versus debating, so that's all I'm really going to say on the subject. Because of Godzilla's fame, the suffix Zilla is often applied to things that are either huge or just monstrous in general. Although, be careful in making Godzilla spoofs. A lot of people mistakenly think Godzilla's in the public domain and end up getting sued for it. There's actually a common joke that says, if you think Godzilla's scary, just wait till you see his lawyers. In fact, Godzilla's owner company Toho has been known to sue businesses ending in Zilla, so be careful out there, folks. Don't go too far for your Godzilla parody like Nickelodeon did. Well, that's all for this episode of Bonus Monsters of the Mind. Remember to leave your request for monsters, and I'll see you guys next time with a regular video. Bye!